Tonight, North Queensland flood victims begin to return home as the clean-up effort gets underway. Also, a much-needed incentive from the state government for doctors setting up practices in regional South Australia. Donald Trump cops a huge blow to his 2024 presidential campaign, with the Colorado Supreme Court declaring him ineligible for the White House. And Matt Short leads the Strikers to a 6-wicket win over the Thunder, their first of the BBL season. Good evening, Jessica Harmsen with ABC News South Australia. Far North Queenslanders are returning home to scenes of utter devastation after the record rains. 5 days out from Christmas, there's a sense of despair at the massive clean-up effort ahead. There are also grave fears for an 85-year-old man who's been missing since Sunday.
A holiday season full of heartache.
I'm going through stage 3 or whatever it is today, and I'm a bit more emotional today.
Kate Campbell's home, a filthy, mud-soaked mess.
What about that furniture down there?
The mud army's rolled up, the community spirit shining through.
Right down here, we're coming up to a few more steps here.
But the gravity of this disaster is just starting to hit home now the rain's eased.
Pretty heart-wrenching that a lot of people don't have contents insurance, so they can't get most of the stuff replaced.
At nearby Holloways Beach, this father has lost almost everything he owns.
I don't see much of a Christmas coming, that's for sure.
The streets are littered with debris. It's a disaster the Far North will be grappling with for months.
We're alive, we're safe, so that's all we can ask for.
From first light, the Army recommenced mass evacuations from the small community of Wujal. The Townsville-based Chinooks flying women and children out first to the safety of Cooktown. Entire towns like Rossville, just south of there, are still isolated with roads cut. Belle Newman has 4 children under 5 and supplies are dwindling.
We've probably got at least 5 days of stuff.
There are grave fears for an 85-year-old man missing north of Cairns.
Police have accessed his property but still not been able to locate him.
Dead cows litter beaches and wild barramundi lay rotting in a Cairns park.
It was devastating really to see the damage to the infrastructure, the beaches. It'll take a long time to recover.
And it is yet another kick in the teeth for tourist operators.
Flashbacks of the COVID pandemic and the big old unknown.
While the human side of this disaster is still unfolding, it's also an agricultural catastrophe. This region is a food bowl and produces bananas, mangoes and sugar for the rest of the country. Cane fields are saturated and there is no way of getting crops to the local sugar factory after a railway bridge washed away.
All our cane comes across this river, and there's no other way to get it across.
13 weeks of income support is now available for those who can't work. And a flood appeal has been launched as those who are high and dry try to keep up the Christmas spirit. Christy Sexton McGrath, ABC News.
A $500 million Defence Department data management project is in disarray, according to a previously secret review that's now been tabled in the Senate. The review has identified multiple serious governance failures, and it also raises questions about the $100 million contract issued to consulting giant KPMG as part of the project.
For years, Defence has tried to create a unified digital platform for its wide array of data, from staffing to logistics to satellite imagery, to give soldiers an edge in combat.
This has been the holy grail for Defence for decades.
The Prime Minister today...
Last year, the former government announced KPMG would help to deliver the project in a $100 million contract.
There's been this idea that you can bring together all the disparate sources of information into one place, and that would give the warfighter an edge by giving the warfighter the right information at the right time at the right place.
Now, a previously secret review of the project has been tabled in the Senate, revealing serious governance failures by Defence. The review found taxpayers may have paid for goods and services not received, and that changes to the contract to reduce demands on KPMG are watering down the integrity of the process. Defence was forced to hand over the review by order of independent Senator David Pocock, who had been concerned about government contracts with the Big Four consultancy firms.
Clearly there's some huge issues when it comes to the use of the Big Four and the gravy train that they've been on.
The review revealed the government had even released $100,000 to KPMG for work it knew had not met the terms of the contract, in the interest of maintaining a collaborative relationship.
Why, as Australians, we are tolerating governments shoveling money to multinational companies that aren't delivering.
Defence accepted it needed better traceability of its payments to KPMG, but rejected many other findings of the review, insisting it has maintained control over its contract with KPMG. This review is scathing and raises serious questions about the planned expenditure of more than $500 million taxpayer dollars. It also suggests there's profound confusion inside Defence about who's in charge and what's really being delivered. KPMG told the ABC that it rejected any claim of impropriety and said Defence has not paid more than it should have for its work on the project. Linton Besser, ABC News.
A woman is dead and another woman has been injured in a violent attack at a business in Adelaide's western suburbs. Emergency services were called to Lydia Street in Plympton mid-afternoon. Police say 2 people were stabbed inside the business. A 30-year-old woman died at the scene and a 40-year-old woman was taken to the Royal Adelaide Hospital in a critical condition. Police say a 30-year-old man was arrested at the scene and is expected to be charged with murder.
They just had him bagged up and then put him in the paddy wagon and took him away.
This area is becoming increasingly violent and really dangerous for a place that never was.
A notorious Adelaide paedophile who sexually abused countless children while he knew he was HIV positive has been sentenced to 36 years in jail. One of Jad William Brooker's 96 victims labelled him vile and said he broke down in court as he heard of Brooker's abhorrent offending over 4.5 years. Evelyn Leckie reports.
After what an investigating officer previously described as the worst and most degrading offending witnessed in 14 years of investigation, 41-year-old Jad William Brooker was sentenced in South Australia's Supreme Court to 36 years behind bars. One of his victims speaking out, saying his jail term will start the process of closure and healing.
He was a vile, vile man. Some of the things that were read out, I didn't even know he did.
The court heard Brooker sexually abused young underage boys, with the youngest being 12 years old.
I broke down in tears. Some of the victims are no longer living. Their stories aren't able to be told and heard. They aren't able to speak for themselves.
Justice Kimber labelled Brooker a prolific offender who knew during some of his crimes that he was sexually abusing children without taking his HIV medication.
Your offending is exceptionally grave. The victims are almost too many to count.
I would dare say he is SA's most notorious and prolific pedophile. Some of the worst that I've ever seen and helped put away.
He was sentenced for 182 separate offences, which included child sexual abuse, aggravated dissemination of child exploitation material, and aggravated producing and possessing child exploitation material. The offending occurred between 2016 and 2020, with his crimes impacting 96 victims. The court heard Brooker disseminated multiple videos of him abusing children to other like-minded adults, with one medical expert saying Brooker showed a distinct lack of empathy for his victims. He was given a non-parole period of 29 years. Evelyn Leckie, ABC News, Adelaide.
GPs who move to the country could pocket up to $10,000 under a new multi-million-dollar deal between the state government and doctors' associations. It's hoped the incentive will lure more GPs to towns that are facing critical doctor shortages.
Dr Max Van Dissel is one of only 7 doctors in Kapunda in SA's mid-north. The experienced GP says for the past 5 years he's struggled to recruit enough doctors to meet patient demand.
We're having to get up in the middle of the night to see emergencies and, and on weekends
So that can become quite draining if there's not an increased number of doctors on the roster.
It's a problem across the state. The SA Rural Doctors Association estimates there's a current shortfall of about 60 country GPs.
You'd only have to ask any country person about how difficult it is to get an appointment with their GP to get some appreciation about how widely felt the problem is.
The government hopes to lure more GPs to the regions from February, when it introduces incentive payments of up to $10,000 for those who move to 32 country towns, as well as remuneration for teaching and supervision work and a 3% hospital rate increase. It's part of a new 4-year rural GP agreement, costing taxpayers $440 million.
There's been underinvestment in this area for many, many decades, but we can now see the incentives, the support being put in place.
It's been, more than 10 years of neglect, so there's a lot of work to build things up.
In Renmark, locals hope the changes will make it easier for them to see a GP.
It would be absolutely great if we could get just a few more doctors. It would be fantastic.
To send out to the doctors, please come, because we need you.
A plea which resonates across regional SA. Stephanie Richards, ABC News.
Online accommodation platform Airbnb will have to shell out more than $30 million for tricking customers into paying higher prices. The federal court found the tech giant engaged in misleading and deceptive conduct for years by fooling customers into thinking prices for listings were in Australian dollars. The listings were actually in the more expensive US currency, a fact hidden in the small print on the last page of the booking process. Airbnb will pay a $15 million fine, $15 million in compensation to customers, and costs for the regulator, the ACCC, which brought the action. In a stunning and unprecedented decision, Donald Trump has been banned from running in Colorado's Republican presidential primary. The state's top court has ruled him ineligible, citing the federal constitution's insurrection clause. The former president's legal team says it'll appeal, setting up a showdown in the US Supreme Court.
Donald Trump is in full campaign mode.
On my first day back in the White House, I will terminate every open borders policy.
But his path to a presidential comeback just got more complicated. The Colorado Supreme Court has disqualified him from running in the state's Republican primary. The reason? The events of January 6, 2021, when Trump supporters stormed the US Capitol. In a 4-3 split decision, the Colorado court ruled against the former president, citing the US Constitution's 14th Amendment, which bars office holders who have engaged in insurrection or rebellion from running again.
The shared bond of our Constitution was applied to ensure that the rules are followed.
Donald Trump's legal team says the ruling attacks the very heart of this nation's democracy. We trust that the Supreme Court will reverse this unconstitutional order. The decision has been stayed until January 4, just before the deadline for ballots to be printed.
If the Supreme Court upholds the Colorado decision, it's obviously the end for Trump's political career. He can't run for office again in the United States.
Speaking shortly after the ruling, Donald Trump provided no direct response, but he did reference the multiple legal cases against him.
They're weaponizing law enforcement for high-level election interference.
He's the subject of 2 criminal cases over alleged election interference, conspiracy charges over the alleged misuse of classified documents, not to mention a hush money case in New York. But he's still the runaway Republican frontrunner and leads Joe Biden in some head-to-head polls.
And we have 11 months to go.
11 months until the general election, but less than 1 month until the start of the primaries. Sean Hassett, ABC News.
Despite mounting international calls for a new truce in Gaza, the United Nations Security Council remains deadlocked on putting a ceasefire motion to a vote. Civilian casualties within the Strip continue to soar. Gazan health authorities say around 100 Palestinians were killed over the past 24 hours.
This was the place they called home, reduced to rubble. The southern border town of Rafah, which only weeks ago Israel was urging Palestinians to move to, again the target of Israeli missile strikes. Mahmoud Zorab is lucky to be alive. He weeps over the deaths of his children, including a newborn baby girl. Just 2 weeks old, this grandmother says. Her name hadn't even been registered. 13 other family members were also killed. As the civilian toll grows, so too does the international pressure for a pause in fighting. A UN Security Council vote on a Gaza ceasefire has been delayed a second time. The language used in the wording of the statement understood to be a key sticking point. Israel now says it's ready to support another pause to enable more hostages to be released.
We are not fighting the people of Gaza. They are not our enemies. We are fighting Hamas. They are our enemies.
The impact of this conflict is being felt around the world. Attacks on container ships in the Red Sea from Iran-backed Houthi rebels is threatening global supply chains. Australia has signed an international statement endorsed by the US condemning these attacks, but has yet to commit to meeting a request from the US to send a warship.
We know that the US understands the best way for Australia to support this is through diplomatic support, and our resources have been prioritised in our region.
A humanitarian tragedy in Gaza, a growing crisis on the seas. This is a war worsening by the day. John Lyons, ABC News.
Lava spewing from a volcano in Iceland appears to be flowing away from a nearby town, offering hope that homes will remain safe. Scientists have been expecting the eruption for weeks and evacuated the fishing village in November. Most of the lava is flowing into an area with little infrastructure, but gas pollution remains a concern.
It's one of the most spectacular volcanic eruptions in recent memory. After weeks of seismic activity, the volcano north of Grindavik finally erupted. Lava bubbling and spewing along a volcanic vent around 4 kilometres long.
It's just fascinating to see just nature in action. It's just like something from a movie.
You can still see some lava coming up. For us, this is amazing.
Coming today, getting the chance to be behind Sirlingahöll and being so close to it, and being able to fly the drone literally 10 metres away, is an amazing feeling.
The Icelandic government said it did not pose an immediate threat to life.
I can say that lava seems to be flowing in the convenient direction, but we also know the flow of lava can change the surrounding landscape, so this can change with short notice.
Grindavik's 4,000 residents had been evacuated last month following a series of earthquakes.
There's a chance that it opens up somewhere else and then it's going to be closer to Grindavik. So I don't see that in the near future they will let people get close to Grindavik. So we are back in the waiting game.
So far, the eruption has not produced the kind of volcanic ash that disrupts air travel. Nor has the lava flow threatened the popular Blue Lagoon geothermal spa or the local power plant.
It's just in time for Christmas and hopefully it will just stay like this or stop, because this could affect some infrastructure.
It's unclear how long the eruption will last, but experts say it could go for weeks, even months. Steve Kinane, ABC News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is considering a proposal to mobilise 500,000 more civilians into the armed forces. The controversial move would mark a dramatic step up of Kyiv's war with Russia as it nears the 2-year mark. The Ukrainian leader has told his end-of-year news conference he wanted to hear more arguments in favour before deciding whether to send the military's proposal to Parliament. Russia has been expanding its army and says it plans to boost its ranks to 1.5 million personnel. Coming up on 7:30 with Laura Tingle, the suspicious disappearance of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny.
The problem is we don't know almost anything, and we have no idea where he is, in which prison.
Unfortunately, it's not a big surprise.
It is obvious for everyone in Russia and for Putin as well that Alexei is his main opponent and his main rival.
On to finance now, and the All Ords climb to its highest level in 10 months as markets continue to speculate about possible interest rate cuts next year. Here's David Chow.
There's a lot of small businesses out there that managed to survive the pandemic, but were sadly unable to cope with higher interest rates and the cost of living crunch. New figures from the corporate regulator ASIC show that New South Wales was the state which had the highest number of businesses going broke, making up 41% of all insolvencies reported in the past financial year, followed not so closely by Victoria and Queensland. And the worst affected industries were construction and accommodation and food services, which together made up almost half of all business failures. But there was no sign of that gloom on the share market. The All Ords went up by 0.6% to hit a fresh 10-month high, thanks to gains from mining stocks. And today's worst performers were the ones which gave weak trading updates, like PEXA, which does online property settlements, and KMD Brands, which is better known for its Kathmandu and Rip Curl stores. Overseas, markets rose on speculation there'll be some big interest rate cuts next year. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones and Nasdaq 100 climbed to new record highs yet again. Crude oil prices continue to lift as more oil tankers continue to avoid trade routes along the Red Sea due to attacks by Houthi rebels from Yemen. And the Aussie dollar has risen to 67.7 US cents, which is its highest level in 5 months. And finally, orange juice has been absolutely crushing it this year. The global price of frozen concentrated OJ futures has almost doubled since January due to extreme weather. And if you're a big drinker of coffee and hot chocolate, it's not looking much better for your wallet either. And that's finance.
On to sport now, and a match-short masterclass has helped lift the Adelaide Strikers to a thrilling 6-wicket win over the Sydney Thunder in the Big Bash League. The Strikers captain hit 11 boundaries, while Englishman Adam Hose fired late to get the Strikers over the line at Adelaide Oval.
Clutch hitting at the death from Adam Hose, a towering 6 securing a maiden win for Adelaide.
The Strikers, they're home and hose thanks to Adam. What a way to do it.
He almost hit a boundary every ball, which is what you want from blokes coming at the end. To finish off an innings like that was unreal. And, you know, guys that can sort of ramp both sides of the wicket like that, they're very hard to bowl to. So, yeah, very happy.
Fresh recruit Cameron Bancroft anchored the Thunder's innings, knocking 74 runs, as Sydney set Adelaide a mammoth target of 201 to win. The Strikers named 4 debutants for the clash, including former Hurricanes opener Darcy Short. He and Matt Short combined for an opening stand of 139 to put the home side in control.
Darcy Short's getting in the act.
Felt like I got bogged down through the middle of it. They bowled pretty well. And then, yeah, obviously bowled well at the end. Couldn't finish it off, but yeah, pretty happy with the start.
Matt Short top scored on 82 before being caught in his first match as full-time skipper.
Gets an hold of that. Gets hold of that. Number 6.
With just 8 needed, Jake Weatherald was run out in amateurish fashion while dawdling to the non-striker's end.
Why has he not put the bat in?
Don't need any more, mate. That's all I need.
That is ridiculous.
Englishman Adam Hose calming things down, hitting 2 boundaries in the final over. His unbeaten 28 from just 9 deliveries, handing Adelaide its first win of the season with 2 balls to spare. Cameron Slessor, ABC News, Adelaide.
Australia women's cricket captain Alyssa Healy says playing so few test matches is hard to take as she prepares to lead her side in tomorrow's one-off match against India in Mumbai. Overnight, her husband and Australian fast bowler Mitchell Starc broke the record at the Indian Premier League auction when he was bought for an eye-watering $4.4 million.
Shot. Beautiful batting from Alyssa Healy.
Alyssa Healy made her Australian debut in 2010, but she's played just 7 tests since.
For us to get sort of a one-off test match, it's really hard to take. I'd love to see more played. I think the reality of that is it won't happen.
She says women aren't given the same opportunity to test themselves as the men.
And you can throw it away and go, you know what, it was really hard. The conditions were difficult, but you didn't really get a chance to adjust that for the next test match and sort of build into the series.
Instead, she'll lead Australia against India as part of a multi-format series, which also includes 3 one-day and 3 T20 internationals.
These multi-format series are a great way to introduce Test cricket back into international fixtures.
A terrific opening over from Mitchell Starc.
Healy's one of Australia's highest paid players, but her income pales against her husband's, Australia fast bowler Mitch Starc.
An opening bid of 2 crore, please, for Mitchell Starc.
Overnight, Starc was bought for a record price at the Indian Premier League mini-auction by the Kolkata Knight Riders.
Newest member to the Kolkata team at 24 crore and 75 lakh. Sold. What a welcome back for Mitchell Starc.
That translates to a staggering $4.42 million, or more than $13,000 for every possible ball he could bowl at the coming IPL.
Fair bit of shock and certainly excitement with how it was all unfolding, but nothing that I could have ever imagined, I don't think.
His captain, Pat Cummins, briefly held the record when he was picked up earlier in the night by the Sunrisers Hyderabad for more than $3.6 million.
Sold.
Not bad for 2 months' work. David Mark, ABC News.
Charities are urging South Australians to donate their time as well as their money this Christmas as they face high levels of demand. If you're tired of hearing headlines about cost of living crisis, here are some suggestions on how you can help.
It's time to wrap up the work year, and what better way to do it than to prepare some gifts for needy children. These volunteers are from a company that donates workers' time to charities.
We've found it been a really valuable tool for bringing teams together and getting connected with the communities in which we operate.
Corporate volunteers can really help charities by bringing in lots of reliable manpower at key times.
Individuals are always supporting, but there's also a great opportunity for us to ask businesses in local communities, large or small, to understand that they can also help provide services and provide volunteers.
But the cost of living crisis has made this Christmas especially tough, and charities need more help. More businesses and clubs are needed to step up.
This time of year, there's an increasing demand in supporting families, particularly around cost of living pressures.
At this homelessness support centre, donations are down.
By this time last year, we had in excess of 40 hams in the freezer ready to go for Christmas Day. This year we've only received 5. That's a sign of the times.
The centre has enough volunteers, but says people can help by donating food for Christmas meals, toys for children and camping supplies that people can use for sleeping rough.
Things like solar-powered phone chargers, handheld battery fans, things that are lightweight, they can be carried by a person, but they help them go through the rough sleeping.
If you can't donate an item, many charities would love your time or your money. Something valuable you can give this Christmas. Eric Twarchek, ABC News.
On to all the weather details now, and tonight's photo is from Malcolm Watt and was taken at the Happy Valley Reservoir. After an overnight low of 11.7 degrees, the sun shone today and it reached 21.1 degrees in the city at 4:15 this afternoon. Further afield, skies were mostly clear, but a southerly airstream caused lower than average top temperatures, ranging from 15 at Parawa to 34 at Oodnadatta. Onto the charts, and cloud over the north of the country and down along the east in troughs and lows will bring heavy showers, storms and gusty winds to the top end and wet weather around the Queensland-New South Wales border, while drawing heat into WA's southwest and to the country's north. A high will keep South Australia dry. So, storms for Darwin tomorrow with 35 degrees, showers for Brisbane and Sydney, cloudy with 18 degrees in Hobart and 37 for Perth. Closer to home, fine and sunny right across the north tomorrow, 32 degrees in Coober Pedy, 27 in Port Augusta. A little milder in parts of the south, but staying dry, 26 for Clare and Naracoorte, 21 for Mount Gambier. A current strong wind warning for our coastal waters will continue tomorrow for the upper west and south central coasts, Spencer Gulf, Gulf St Vincent and the upper southeast coast. The sunny weather will extend across Adelaide as well tomorrow, 24 degrees for the city and dropping down to 11 overnight. On the waters, south to southeasterly winds to 25 knots with seas to 1.5 metres north of Grange during the afternoon. The sun will rise around 6 o'clock and set spot on 8:30. Looking a bit further ahead to the 7-day forecast, 27 degrees on Friday and Saturday, a top of 23 degrees forecast for Christmas Eve, cool overnight for Santa's arrival, dropping to 13, then 21 on Christmas Day. That's all from the Adelaide newsroom. Thanks very much for your company. Laura Tingle is up next with 7:30.